So we go to this meeting in good faith. I had always had a good relationship with Sadie. I would have considered Chris Goodwin one of my best friends at the time. So we weren't concerned about meeting with them. I think some of the other staff may have been more concerned than I was, but I trusted them. I liked them. I felt like they would have both of them would have my best interest at heart. So we met. I told all the staff, that we're going to go do this thing. We talked to them. We talked about what we had been through. There were tears. People talked about their experiences, about their frustration with the current situation and not knowing what's going on. Can't remember exactly the date that they told us that they decided that they were going to terminate Jeff. They had investigated the money allegation and decided that they were going to terminate the executive director. They had come to me asking if we had current address information for him or current phone number information because they needed to be able to get in touch with him to tell him that. And I think we shuffled together what we had because some of us had been out to his house to have to take him documents and things because he had actually been working from home for quite a while because he had gotten really sick with COVID. So tons of the agency documents were actually in his home and at his house. He had stuff. So it turned out that we ended up finding out at some point, and I can't remember if it was this meeting or a subsequent meeting, that he actually quit before they could fire him. So we didn't know what that meant, and we also didn't know how we were moving forward. It must have been prior to this meeting because I think part of that meeting was about us trying to figure out what the hell was going on at that point, what we were doing, what was happening with the agency, whatever. We left there feeling a little bit better. I remember Chris and Sadie telling us that they were going to call a meeting with the full board, that we deserved to hear from them and to understand what was going on and where we were and where the situation was. So we left there feeling pretty good. We walk back to the agency because it was very close to where this park was, pretty much just across a couple parking lots, to find out that most of our social media access, they had asked me to add them onto the accounts, that while we were gone, most of our social media access, and I think most of our access to the main server, we had it was the G drive, but it was this drive with all of our agency information on it, that our access to those things had been cut off. No explanation. At that point felt like it was a trick to get us out of the office and to not to have us all signed out of everything so that they would be able to go in and do that uninterrupted. So people were not feeling good about that at all. We ended up getting told that we were going to have a meeting with the full board on the 9th of June of 2020. We came to that meeting. Everybody was hot at that point. Frustrated, angry, confused, all the things. And half of the board members were in person. I feel like Louis McCabe Rosario was in person. Sadie Fisher was in person. Luis Burgos may have been in person. Chris Goodwin was in person. And Lisa Lapierre was on Zoom. Dana Weiss was on Zoom. And then I have my list of my board members written down here somewhere. And even that felt super insulting. Sylvia was on Zoom. Shani Wilson, I think, had resigned at that point because she had gotten so frustrated with the board not wanting to listen to us or help us that she had resigned. Matt Burns, I believe, was on Zoom. He was the board president at that time. And the meeting had gotten so heated because they basically were like, we don't know what to tell you. There's nothing we can do. There's no money. We had come up, so there were a bunch of trainings that were scheduled to be happening. Our education department that was scheduled to do training. So thousands of dollars and pending. Pride was coming up very shortly. So we were coming up with a bunch of, one of our coworkers, one of my staff, came up with all these ideas for virtual Pride to be able to still raise money and to engage the community. And so we had all these plans that we had been coming up with to try to stay open and keep the doors open. even with all these things going on. And during that meeting, that Zoom meeting, they basically told us that we could choose to stay open. And if we didn't raise, I want to say like $30,000 or $40,000, some incredibly high amount of money during that like couple weeks, the education department was forced to cancel all their trainings prior to this. So if this Pride didn't bring in this virtual Pride, and this was back before virtual things were happening because it was like early in the pandemic, if we didn't bring in enough money, that we would then basically not get a severance pay, not be able to cash out our PTO. If we shut down, we would probably shut down much quicker because the money would be gone even faster. And so we could take that on if we chose to, with little to no assistance from them. But when the money was gone, that meant that we would not get any, not even get paid out our final paycheck when the place closed down. Or we could opt not to, and then they would figure out what to do from there. So we're frustrated that they didn't come in, that they didn't talk to us face to face. Dana's response was basically that it was a volunteer position, and so she didn't have to stay to have to answer these questions, and she was basically coming as a courtesy, but she didn't even have to be there. Which also felt very insulting. I remember Luis Macabre-Rosario pulled us aside afterwards because he was there in person and told us how sorry he was, how sad it was, how bad he felt, how he completely understood, how he was there for us, which was ironic because he then went on to go around the community and tell different people in the community how the closer was our fault and no one should hire us and how terrible we all were. So that felt like a huge stab in the back later on when we found that out from very important community members, like, that you would know and respect, told us that those are the things that he was saying. And so basically they said, we demanded answers at that point, like that night, like, you're going to tell us what's going to happen with us. Like, you can't just have us on this hook now, not knowing what's going to happen or not. So at that point, Sadie and Chris basically said, okay, that's fair. You shouldn't have to just be hanging on a string not knowing what's happening. So we'll talk to you about it. We'll get something to you within, I want to say 48 hours. They said that they were going to get back to us. And so even though we were very frustrated and very hurt, there were tears, there was yelling, it was hard, all on the staff's part. They kind of sat stoic. We left that meeting having kind of said our piece, and we waited. So we then got a message from Chris Good. So this meeting was on the 10th of June, 2020. We got a message from Chris Goodwin on the 11th of June that he was going to meet with us that day in a Zoom. So we were all different places because we had been working from home because of the pandemic or whatever. We get on this Zoom. I remember I was in the car parked in the bank parking lot for some reason. I remember specifically where I was. And we were told that the agency was closing and our last day would be tomorrow. So that would have been June 12th. That was the notice that we had. They were keeping Tim on, the assistant and the accountant, to pay out like last payroll. We would get... we had been getting some supplementary income from the PPP extended income thing to be able to pay for us for a few months prior to that. That we'd be transferring off of that and transferring to unemployment, and they would help us with that process. And that was it. And we didn't get any further instruction on how to close up. A bunch of the staff offered to stay and help close down things to make everything was okay, to transition to the community. We were told no. We didn't get any help with our unemployment. Many of us didn't even get the letters that we needed to verify the unemployment that we didn't have jobs to be able to apply. One of our coworkers wasn't able to get employment at all because they had a part-time job, so that made them not qualify. So their major source of income was just gone with no notice. All of us were on 2-3 month delays to even start getting unemployment because unemployment in New York State was a mess at that time, and we couldn't get the things that we needed, and no one could find them, and no one was in the office, and they fired everybody. And we would stay on the phone with unemployment for hours and hours and hours trying to navigate. At one point, our unemployment got cut off, and we had to figure out why and get it turned back on, so that was another delay. So then that was how we found out that there would be no more out alliance and we didn't have jobs. We never received severance. We never received compensation. of any sort after that point from the agency.